So on Twitter, I asked people if they were interested in hearing the story of the first job I ever had and the first time I ever actually dealt with racism in the workplace in that job. So I figured I went ahead and, or I would go ahead and do a speak them about it because people seem to like these videos and it really does mean a lot to me. And I want to tell y'all a story about, or tell y'all the story about my first job and kind of what happened and kind of some things that you want to, I guess, watch out for. I don't really know if that's really, this video is not really going to be one of those like, oh, I'm giving you a life lesson. That's not what I'm doing here. It's just more so me telling a story, and you can take from it what you want. You see what I'm saying? You can take from it, if it helps you out in some way, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Not a big deal. But I think it's a story that I just kind of want to get out. So, and really this whole story came from, the reason why I was even inspired to talk about it is because I was talking to this guy, he's an animator named DH Animations, and he was telling me he got hired at McDonald's. He's like, hey, I got a job. And I was telling him, hey, that was my first job too. I worked at McDonald's. So yeah, I used to work in the fast food industry when I was 17, 18. I think I was actually 18 when I got this job. And it was the first job I ever had. It wasn't really the first job. Like I did odd jobs here and there, some like light IT work. And I also, when I was in high school, I used to sell mix CDs. I sold mix CDs and copies of like, VHS tapes of like movies. And it wasn't, I wasn't really allowed to do that, but I did do it for people, wrestling pay-per-views and things like that. This is what I did in high school. I don't know, again, the legalities of it back then were a little weird because they were mixed CDs and I guess you weren't really allowed to sell them, but a lot of people did it back then. It was just something that we did in high school. This was literally in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I made money doing that, but this is my first actual job, and it was at McDonald's. And my dad had got me the job because one of my dad's friend's girlfriend worked there, and she got me the job. And I went out there to go interview. And the McDonald's that I worked at was pretty far from my house. It was about a 45-minute drive, but it just so happened to be, like the McDonald's just so happened to be, like where. Like on the way to my dad's job, like literally right close to my dad's job, so I could go with my dad. We'd drive out there together. He would drop me off at McDonald's, then he'd go to work, and then he'd pick me up at the end of the day. So I worked the day shift at McDonald's, and the job. All right, so what made the job fun was that I was young, and there were other young people there. A lot of people who were in high school or just graduating high school. There were a lot of pretty girls there, and I was 18, so I was, you know how you are when you're younger. But we had a good time. Like we had a good time there. As far as like my friends that I made there, I made friends with this kid named KRS2. That was his nickname. He was a really big hip hop fan, so me and him bonded on hip hop. We would listen to a lot of hip hop records, a lot of underground stuff that we got into. He was the only friend that I had who was really deeply into the underground. Like I didn't really go and make my online friends just yet. I had a few, but it wasn't really rap friends. Like I made a lot throughout the years, but afterward. But when I was at McDonald's, he was the only guy I knew in real life who actually knew about like the Rhyme Sayers Clique and Definitive Jux. And if you're a hip hop fan, you know what I'm talking about. Raucous Records and all that stuff. So we bonded over that. We had a great time there over that, and I had a lot of really funny coworkers. Now I ran into issues where, first of all, the pay was horrible. So this was in 2002. And in 2002, the minimum wage was $5.50 an hour. $5.50 an hour. I think the minimum wage now in the U.S. is like $7.75 or $8. Back then it was $5.50. I was making the absolute bare minimum. I was making $5 an hour, bro. Nonsense. Now, obviously, inflation changed things, but $5.50 an hour is crap. And I just remember working there, and I remember, I got a raise. And I got paid $5.60 an hour. Yippee, 10 cents. One thing I didn't like about the job was that, obviously, when you work at McDonald's, you tend to hate McDonald's as far as the food goes. Like, when you're not working there, you can go to McDonald's, have your Big Mac, and go from there. But if you're not working there, if you're working there and you're smelling that grease from when you're cooking when you're cooking the fries, because I mainly worked like the hash browns and the fries, which I didn't like. I wanted to get on the grill. I wanted to get online, but I got the chance once in a while, but not that much. I really wanted to work my way up, but I never really got the opportunities there because of politics, so I'm going to get to here in a minute. we the smell will get to you. Like, you don't like McDonald's when that happens. Now, I was lucky enough that when I worked there, the best 2 sandwiches McDonald's has ever had were there, and that's the Philly cheesesteak, which they have not had since 2002, and the chicken ranch. I love the chicken ranch, and I love the Philly cheesesteak. They don't have those anymore, and they were amazing back then, but they only had them for a very short time. They never brought them back. So I was there, and the thing that I did, like I said, was more so the friends I made. The things I did not like was just, the boss of the place was very arrogant. The main manager, but he was rarely ever there. But there was also another manager. I'm not going to say their names because I don't know where they are, and it's been so many years. There was another manager who was kind of a pothead, and he was cool, though. He was, he was a cool guy, a little bit of a stoner, but really nice guy. And I'm not judging at all. Trust me, I'm not judging that whatsoever, but he was the coolest dude. Very chill. Then you had this manager who was a female. Now, I'm not going to say her name again because, number one, it's been so many years and maybe she changed, but she was a complete nightmare for me to work with. Just complete nightmare. And she was a racist, or at least I believed her to be a racist, and I'm going to tell you why, in a minute. So, not only did I have a problem with her, but I also had a problem with this other guy. And if you've ever worked at any place with a lot of people, you're going to run into this guy at some point in your career. Like, if you're out there and you've had jobs, you know what I'm about to tell you. There's always the one guy who, he's not a manager, but he thinks he is. He's got some type of seniority because he started a few days before you did, and he thinks that he's a manager. He thinks that he's in a position of authority, and he tends to boss you around. He has no authority at all. He's not a manager. He has no stroke whatsoever, but he thinks he does. And whenever I deal with people like this in the workplace, which is why I'm so happy that I'm self-employed now, but whenever I've dealt with people like that in the workplace, I've always had an issue with them because if you're a person who's of authority and you're abusing your power, that's already bad. If you're someone who is not of authority, but you want to pretend like you are and you're still abusing it, that's disrespectful to me, to your actual bosses, and to yourself, to your coworkers too. And this guy, I don't even remember his name. But he was just a complete prick. And him and I would butt heads a lot because he would basically raise his voice at me, and you never want to raise your voice at me, dog. Just don't raise your voice at me in the workplace because I'm not going to take it, especially if you're not a boss. Even if you are a boss, don't raise your voice at me. But this guy was raising his voice, pretty much told him, chill out. Things were going to get physical. That's how it was back then. I'm not saying that I wanted to get that way, but that's what happened. Because the dude was like, you're not going to get in my face and raise your voice, bro. I'm just not going to let it happen. And I complained about him to the bosses because I said, listen, this is going to end up being a problem soon, like a real problem. Things chilled out. But what ended up happening was they moved me away from working in the fry area to being more of a janitorial role. So I basically went around cleaning the tables, spraying them down, wiping them down real good. And I also would clean the outside. And I noticed that whenever this one manager lady was in charge, the one that I think is racist, she would always be very condescending towards me, really for no reason. She was very condescending, and I noticed that she only became condescending when she realized that I was Latino, when she realized that I was Hispanic. Prior to me, because I look like a white boy. If you see my pictures from Kamehacon, I have a tiny bit of a tan, but also I'm very light-skinned. I'm white. I look like a white guy, but I'm not. I wasn't even born in this country. And, I'm Hispanic. I'm Cuban. I've talked about this before. And, but I look white, like I said, and I speak English kind of like an American does because I learned English when I was like 4 or 5 years old, so I kind of adopted the American dialect. I don't have an accent, but Spanish is my first language. So when she found out that I was Hispanic because I was speaking Spanish to other coworkers, she made a comment where she's like, no Spanish, English only. And I didn't like that because even though I do somewhat understand kind of where she's coming from, it wasn't a customer, it was a coworker, and we were having a discussion about something that wasn't even work related, but it was during work. But there wasn't like it was busy or anything. I just made a comment to her or a comment to this coworker about in Spanish, and she didn't like that. And she had a real kind of salty look on her face. She was a white woman, blonde hair, blue eyes, the Aryan type. So I noticed that she would always make the Hispanic people do the worst jobs ever, like clean out the nasty trash cans in the back, just dirty stuff, the dishwashing, and she would always put me there, and I had always expressed a desire to move up in the company. I wanted to become an assistant manager and a manager because I didn't want to be stuck just doing the same thing. I got tired of doing French fries and hash browns. You get tired of it. I wanted to move up in the company. She wasn't having it. She wouldn't let me do it. Wouldn't give me the opportunity to. I remember the way it was back then is you could earn assistant manager status if you pass 10 tests, and if you there's 10 tests, and then you have to actually apply for it, and kind of go through the training first. I passed 4 of those 10 tests. I wanted to do the other 6. I never got around to doing it, even to this day. Of course, I wound up quitting, actually. I quit that job after about, let's see, I worked there for about 9 months, about 10 months, and then I quit because I couldn't take it anymore. But it just became kind of abusive, again, very condescending. She would treat the Hispanic people differently, but with the other people, she would, like, if you're a manager, you shouldn't be like if you're going to make friends with coworkers, that's fine because we all do that. But if you're actually favoring coworkers and sitting at tables laughing with them and all of a sudden they're getting opportunities other people aren't, again, that's politics, and I don't play politics. And they were kind of getting their people in, and it just became something where I noticed this pattern. And then there was an incident that happened with another coworker that, again, I'm not going to get into because I don't want these people to listen to this and be embarrassed. I'm not giving out no names because it's been so many years that maybe they changed, like I said, and maybe, I don't want to put somebody out on blast. I don't want my followers to go finding them on their social media either, because I haven't found these people in years. I don't even remember their last names, so I doubt you'll be able to, but you never know. People are crafty nowadays. So anyways, either way, had an incident with a coworker where I said some things I shouldn't have said. A different coworker. A joke that I made was taken completely out of context. It was taken completely the wrong way, and it was almost like I had a meeting with her and the big manager, and it was very much like she was trying to get me out the door. But it was just constantly her berating me every day. Not insulting, but just very passive aggressive. See what I'm saying? And so when you take that, plus the fact that you're making $5.50 an hour, you're seeing your coworkers get bigger, and plus I had found another job that would pay me $7 an hour, which was back then, it's still crap money, but back then it was $1.50 or $1.40 raise more than what I was making. It was like, hey, like, lovely. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's great. Like, I'll take it, So basically, I went in, and one day I just got tired of it. I went to go apply to their job. I got hired, and I pretty much was done. I turned in my, pants and shirt and hat, and I was done with the company. That was it. And I don't regret it at all, at all. What made the job fun was working with a lot of great people, like coworkers, but what would kill that is working with management that didn't respect you, that was straight up racist. I heard her say some things, again, not going to repeat it here, but I've heard her say things about specifically Spanish people that in Spanish, she didn't like the fact that we spoke Spanish, and she didn't like the fact that we were Hispanic, because she would say certain things, like I caught her saying something once that she basically talked her way out of it about Hispanic people. Like I caught her making jokes about rafts and things like that, and and illegals, and she was trying to say that, I was just quoting Comedy Central or something. I didn't buy it. I wasn't buying it, especially since I was watching Comedy Central back then, and I don't remember any of that being on the network during that time. But maybe there was. Again, it just, when you have all these different pieces of evidence adding up, you see what I'm saying? It's something that it's just something that, it's just something that, makes you realize that the person is probably a racist based on all these different things that were, all these different clues. Because she's not going to go out there and just throw around the N-word and say, nobody does that. Nobody's that stupid, because there's enough witnesses there that she would have got in trouble. But there were just a lot of clues, and I never liked her. I had a lot of resentment for her for many years after I quit, because, she made my life hell, but I decided I was never going to go back to McDonald's again. When it comes to fast food, if you're out there and you're a fast food worker and you really enjoy it, like, that's great. It's just not for me. I always wanted to be an IT guy, and then after that is when I went to college. Like, about 2 years after that's when I went to college, and, to get my degrees and whatnot, my certifications. So it wasn't for me. If you're out there though and you like that kind of work, that's great. I just feel like fast food, with the way that the pay is and the amount of nonsense you deal with. And here's the thing: I haven't worked in that industry in so long that it might have gotten better now. So I'm speaking from a point of ignorance, okay? It's just one of those things where I feel like that's a temporary job. Like, you should work there when you're like a teenager, early 20s, and then try to move on from it. Now, if you do become a manager, then that's different. If you want to work your way up and you get the opportunities to, that's different. But as just a regular employee, you should strive for better, I think. But again, if you like it, that's great. One of the things that kind of bothered me about working there is there were some coworkers there that were kind of older ladies. And I say older like in their 50s and 60s. And I remember we were competing against Burger King that was like across the street or like close by. I think it was like down the road. And I remember Burger King shut down and they had this big party. This is kind of stupid. Like, it's really stupid. They had a party down the road. I never went to this party. I didn't go to the party, but I was told what happened. That, it was this really dumb kind of self-pride thing where they showed the picture of like the Burger King that got shut down. They went out of business. And they showed like, like the Burger King all boarded up and people were like cheering. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're cheering that if people who work there are out of jobs now. Like, I don't like that. And I was 18. I was a kid, yo. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, why are you cheering for people to be unemployed? Because when that Burger King shut down, people were out of work. I just didn't like that. Like, why do you have such self-pride for McDonald's, a corporation that doesn't give a shit about you, doesn't even pay you like a human being should be paid? And why do you have such pride for a company because you just happen to work there? Like, what if you worked at Burger King? Would you hate McDonald's? Like, I never understood that. I was never one of those guys that had pride in a company I worked for unless the company was doing great things for the community or if it was a straight-laced company that paid me and treated people great. And I have worked for companies like that in my career. But this company was very much underpaid, a lot of politics going on. I actually made friends with the owner. That's the funny thing. We were cool. I lost contact with him years ago. He looked like Jesse Ventura. I remember he looked like Jesse the Body Ventura. But anyways, I told my dad that, and he thought it was funny back then. He was a Jesse Ventura looking guy. But no, I just never understood why you would celebrate that. Like, yeah, you're competing against Burger King, but really it was you. It wasn't you that did anything. You just did your job. Burger King screwed themselves over or whatever. It wasn't McDonald's that beat Burger King in that particular area. We weren't doing anything. We weren't in control of the prices or the food. We just cooked it and put it out there. I really did enjoy the job for a while, but I remember one day somebody was like, we need 50 spicy chickens. And I'm like, 15? They're like, no, 50. I was like, oh boy. And then I go through the drive-thru and I see it's a van with like 15 dudes in there that were painting. I'm not going to make a joke on that. You can make the joke yourself. But 15 people in the van that were painters, and they wanted 50 spicy chickens. I guess they were probably going to take it back to their job, but we had to make all them spicy chickens, I remember. Yeah. And one thing that sucks, too, about working fast food or working any food is that they throw away so much food, man. Like, when you work at McDonald's and you go from breakfast to lunch, which, again, nowadays a lot of McDonald's restaurants have 24-hour breakfast, so maybe it's different now, but we used to have, like, a whole stack of, like, bagels and, like, biscuits that we had to throw away. Like, we had to throw them away. Like, there's bacon, egg, and cheese biscuits and bagels, and I'm like, hey, like, let me take that home for my family. No, we can't, health codes. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not going to sue you. Like, it's just food. Like, there's homeless people down the road, that they might need that, and they're just throwing the food away. I never liked that about restaurants. I know why they do it. It's a safety precaution. I get it. I just think it's such a waste of food. Like, we live in the United States of America, and, we have people who have hunger, and I just feel like we shouldn't be wasting food, man. Like, that's, even if it's bad food for you. So anyways, that's my story of my first job. I'm trying to think if I missed anything, but yeah, it just taught me about, sort of how companies can brainwash you into thinking that your job means more than it actually does. And it also taught me that, sometimes if something's not for you, you want to strive to be greater. And if a situation is not getting better, then move on from it. I mean, if you're at a job and there's politics going around and you've constantly tried to get better and better and better and better, and they're stopping you from doing so, whether it be racist reasons or whatever, inquire on it. And if it is that then maybe it's time to move on somewhere else. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but that's what I did, and I was certainly happier for it. You know, I was never going to work there my whole life. That was 9 months. Now I don't hate working there. Like, memories of that place aren't entirely all bad, but it's not for me. So that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed my story, and maybe I'll tell more of these soon. I'll talk to you later.